Okay, so deep inside the Book of Ezekiel, there's this ancient puzzle, right? A prophecy that was so full of contradictions, it had scholars scratching their heads for centuries. But then in the 15th century, this one guy comes along and approaches it not like a scholar, but like a detective. And with one single brilliant insight, he unlocked the whole thing. Let's dig into how he did it. So it all kicks off with this absolutely staggering boast from the Pharaoh of Egypt. My Nile is my own. I made it for myself. You hear that? He's not just claiming to be a king. In his own mind, he's basically a god, the source of his entire nation's lifeblood. This is hubris on a whole other level, and it's exactly this pride that the prophet Ezekiel is sent to challenge. So, you gotta ask, how do you respond to that kind of arrogance? Well, not with just a simple warning, no. This response comes as a terrifying vision. Ezekiel paints this picture of a monster rising from the Nile, a powerful symbol of a mighty empire that's right on the brink of a total collapse. And the imagery here, wow, it is just so vivid. Pharaoh is called the mighty monster, the great Tannin. Think of it like this legendary, powerful sea serpent from Hebrew stories, just sprawling out in his river. But God says, I'm going to put hooks in your jaws and drag you out into the desert to die. And get this, he's not going alone. The fish of your channels, that's his people, his armies, they're going to be stuck to his scales, sharing his exact same fate. And the reason for all this? Egypt was a terrible ally to Israel, like a staff of reed that just splintered and hurt them whenever they tried to lean on it for support. Now, for centuries, people just read this as a straightforward story of doom and gloom. But then, in the 15th century, along comes our detective, a brilliant scholar and statesman named Don Isaac Abarbanel. He looks closer, and he sees that under the surface, this chapter is actually a web of contradictions, 6 different puzzles that just don't add up. And this brings us to Abarbanel's first and biggest discovery. He spots something really weird in the book's structure. The prophecy against Egypt is clearly dated to the 10th year of the king's exile, but it shows up in the book after the prophecy against the city of Tyre, which came in the 11th year. The timeline is completely backward. Why on earth would the book be arranged like that? So here's the problem in a nutshell. You've got the Egypt prophecy, which came in year 10, but it's placed after the Tyre prophecy, which came a whole year later. It's like reading chapter 2 of a book before you read chapter 1. In a text that's supposed to be as carefully put together as the Bible, that can't just be a typo. It had to be a clue. And then there was Abarbanel's second puzzle, that number 40. The prophecy is super specific. It says Egypt will be desolate for exactly 40 years. Not a long time, not a generation, but a very precise 40-year period. Why that number? It just seems to pop up out of nowhere, totally random. So faced with all these puzzles, Abarbanel does something brilliant. He doesn't just try to solve each little problem one by one. Instead, he comes up with a single radical idea. A kind of master key that once you turn it, makes every single piece of the puzzle fall perfectly into place. And here it is. This is Abarbanel's master key. He basically says, hey, what if we've been reading the book all wrong? What if the prophets didn't arrange their writings based on when they heard the prophecies from God? What if they organized them based on when the events were actually going to happen? The structure isn't about reception. It's all about fulfillment. So with this new key in hand, this idea of a fulfillment order, Abarbanel goes back to that mixed-up timeline. And suddenly, what looked like a mistake starts to look like a work of absolute genius. Okay, so when you apply this key and look at the actual history, everything just clicks. What really happened? Well, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar, he first conquered the city of Tyre. Only after that did he turn his army south to take over Egypt. So the book's order, Tyre first, then Egypt, perfectly matches the historical order of events. The timeline paradox? Solved. All right, so the timeline makes sense now. But what about that mysterious 40-year period? Well, it turns out Abarbanel's theory unlocks this puzzle too. But to do it, he had to dive deep into the nitty-gritty of Babylonian royal history. Abarbanel just did the math. The prophecy says the conquest of Egypt happened in the 27th year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign. We know from historical records he ruled for another 18 years after that. Then his son, Evil Merodach, ruled for 22 years. So you add those 2 reigns together, 18 plus 22, and what do you get? Boom, exactly 40. The 40-year desolation wasn't random at all. It was the precise length of time that Babylon ruled over Egypt. But Abarbanel's analysis dug up something even more surprising. The prophecy presents divine justice as a kind of cosmic accounting system, where even a brutal tyrant gets paid for a job well done. Yeah, the prophecy itself lays out the logic. It says Nebuchadnezzar's army put in vast labor against Tyre. The siege was so long and so hard that every head is rubbed bald and every shoulder scraped. But they got nothing for it. No reward, no spoils. So God basically says, all right, Egypt will be your payment. The massive wealth of Egypt was literally the paycheck for the work they did destroying Tyre. So, after solving all these puzzles, Abarbanel asks the biggest question of all. Why? Why was this prophecy even given in the first place? What was its real purpose? Because it clearly wasn't just about predicting the future. Abarbanel figured the prophecy had four main goals. 1. To punish Egypt for its arrogance and for being that useless staff of reed. 2. To show that God is the one moving all the pieces on the chessboard of history, even using tyrants like Nebuchadnezzar. 3. It was to prove that Ezekiel was a true prophet. And most importantly, it was meant for the exiled people of Israel. And this brings us to the final verse, which Abarbanel saw as the real key to the whole thing. He argued that by seeing the downfall of Egypt happen exactly as Ezekiel predicted, the exiled people of Israel would finally have a reason to believe his other prophecies. The ones about their own future, their own return home, their own redemption. By seeing their enemy fall, they could finally find hope for their own rise. So, in the end, Abarbanel's genius wasn't about finding some lost scroll or new information. The solution was sitting there the whole time. He just changed the perspective, teaching us to read prophecy not just as a divine message, but as a map of history itself. And that leaves us with a final thought, right? How often are we stuck on a problem, just trying to find more data, when the real solution is to just change our perspective? What puzzles in our own world, in science, in politics, even in our own lives, might suddenly unlock if we just learn to look at time a little differently?